anger, leaving, and depression, along with saying goodbye. Today, we're talking about issues that just about everyone on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, have issues with. I can't speak for the rest of the world. I can only give you the information that I have within my own heart, my own experiences, and things that I've seen firsthand. When it comes to our son, he has, issues with all three of those, four if you count depression. He has issues with being able to express anger in a constructive way. Now, I don't want you to, or anyone out there, to take that, someone who is on the autism spectrum is more violent. Actually, the truth is they're not more violent. They're less likely to commit violent acts than anyone else out there who may have an emotional or learning disability. Those on the spectrum, the facts are they are less likely to be violent. But expressing anger in a proper way. When it comes to my son and a lot of children I have, experienced and been around who are on the spectrum, their number one thing when they can't deal with anger is to either they shut down, and the shutting down is just like there's nothing there. It's just a blank stare. They may pick an item and just stare at it. They're not going to make eye contact with you. They're not even going to look at your face at all. They may look at right at your chest area and focus just on that when they're angry. Or in the case of my son, when he gets over stimulated, either by sound, by lights, colors, environmental pressures, he just takes off. He tries to leave the situation as fast as he can. So, and it may be he may run to the other side of the yard or the playground and just kind of stand there and walk around until he calms down. He may never actually be able to figure out what it is that made him mad, that got him to that point. But he gets to that point, he gets overloaded, and it's his way of dealing with it. Yeah, and we do have to watch him. We don't go to playgrounds that don't have fences around them. Then we learned that way, the hard way, because he will take off, and he is a fast little sucker. But anger has always been an issue with him. Most people who are on the autism spectrum have it, at least four major things that they all have. And when I say they have four major things, this is according to the National Autism Society, is they have issues with the following: reading facial expressions. They can't, their brain doesn't process a happy face, a mad face, or a surprised face. They can't, and if they can get it, it takes a lot of education. It takes a lot of skills and a lot of work from them to be able to read facial expressions. They just don't understand. They can't process it at the same speed as somebody who is neurotypical normal. Those people who are neurotypical are able to, process that, that facial expression a lot faster than most people who are on the autism spectrum. And I'm sure that you've probably met people who, didn't, understand the facial expressions. Maybe you met them in the workplace or at the gym, or maybe you've met them at the grocery store. But they're in, people with autism are all around us. You yourself could be on the spectrum, or your spouse, or a loved one, a friend could be on the spectrum, and they just never been diagnosed. But if they have these four, they probably are on the spectrum somewhere. The next one is understanding and being able to comprehend body expression. Think of it as fight or flight. The fight or flight, body expression, like gotta go, and you're gone. That they don't understand why somebody would do that. Is there a joke? Is that maybe it's a joke that makes that person run? Maybe it's something else, but they're not able to comprehend that right away. And don't get me wrong. If you start at a very young age and you work with a child who is on the spectrum, they can learn these skills and pick these skills up, but not every one of them will, and they won't be able to process them at the same speed. It's like, okay, I remember this face, and this face from the coloring book, and that means that this person is happy. They're processing it in that way. The pictures that they've learned to process that emotion, to what that person is expressing. Those three are happy. These three or four are sad. These five are mad. The next one that they may have issue with is tone of speech and inflection of speech itself. They may have issues with it in that way. And again, it's something that has to be a learned behavior, something that is picked up on. A lot of people that you will meet in your life, and I'm sure you've probably met them in your workplace, or at the gym, or at the grocery store, or have them as their family friend, or a loved one, or your spouse. Everything is kind of monotoned. It's never up here, it's never down here. It's just monotone, because the tone of inflection is what they can hear it, and they can process it a lot faster. The last one that most of the people who are on autism have issues with is emotional responses. When something happens and somebody else near them shows an expression of fear, or something happens and the person that they may be with shows an expression of happiness. Again, it's just like the facial, response. They have to learn that. But now going back to the three. The next one that a lot of people on the spectrum have issue with is leaving. The change in situation, leaving from either going home to going to school, it's changing their routine in any aspect at all. Maybe they're okay with going to school every day, but if you change the entire environment around them of what their routine is every morning, it can cause issues throughout the day that just kind of stack up until maybe they have that anger, that outburst, or loaded, stimulated. Or maybe it's going the opposite direction, coming from school to going to home, or maybe it's leaving the grocery store or their favorite park. But they have that disconnection with a break of doing this to do this, leaving the situation. It can be, and cause turmoil. It can cause them to shut down. It can cause laughter even. It's like, and excitement to some. It all depends upon, again, where they are on the spectrum. And I'm sure a lot of these things that I'm going to be bringing up are ringing true to you. You're like, God damn, I didn't know, Bob over here, who, works at the convenience store, or, is my dentist. He shows a lot of these same things. Everything is regimented in a place, in a location. Everything is monotoned in color. Everything is, the volume of, office music, is low to the point where you can barely hear it. There's very little, background distractions, TVs, anything are brought down into a monotone level. They're never anything, over, stimulating to themselves or to the, maybe somebody who may come there as a business relationship or to visit them. And the last one that so many of them have issues with, and again, not every person on the spectrum is going to have all three of these. Again, I'm speaking only mainly from my experience and from my child and from the experiences of dealing with other children and parents of those other children who are on the spectrum. But saying goodbye. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one or a pet, or it's leaving and moving, homes or schools onto another change in life. You're all done with elementary school. Now you're going on to middle school or to, you're from primary to whatever, school, or you're changing school districts, or, we're moving because we bought a bigger, better house, or mommy and daddy don't have this car anymore. We bought a different car. But saying goodbye, and it's a lot of things. It could be toys that they played with as a child. It could be something that they found extraordinarily gratifying at one point in their life, and somebody supported that. It might be a hobby, an interest in an individual, but they never want to say goodbye. They've latched onto that feeling inside of them, and saying goodbye causes more trauma to them on the inside than it's worth. So they'll keep that item forever. I'm not talking about becoming a hoarder over it, and they'll keep, stacks of newspapers and garbage for the rest of their lives. That's a completely different, set of, emotional, problems and mental health issues. I'm talking about they don't want to let go. They'll latch on to certain things. It's not everything. It could be, hey, I heard that you're really into, James Dean, the actor, the icon, and they'll plaster their entire lives with James Dean memorabilia. Maybe it's a certain music that they like, and they liked it, and they'll connect with that, and they'll never want to say goodbye to that music, that format, or the music itself, the movies of James Dean, or anything that's connected that is like that. Maybe it is with, in my son's case, it was the black and white movie Giant by James Dean. I use that as an example because he really liked that movie. I don't know why, but he sat down, he watched it, he found something that he could connect with that he really enjoyed. So he got a leather jacket, faux leather jacket, for Christmas that year. That was 5 years ago. He won't let that jacket go. He can't even wear it. It's way too small for him. But every morning when he gets dressed, he moves the clothes in his closet to make sure that that jacket is still there. Because he's connected with it. He doesn't want to say goodbye to it. Ever. That is something that he has made a connection with. Now, speaking to different parents within our local autism, community, I asked these parents, do your children have any issues with anger, leaving, and saying goodbye? Along with looking at the national statistics for the last national polls here in the United States, where they asked, those who are, they asked directly to the people who are on the spectrum, do you have an issue with anger, leaving, and saying goodbye? Nationally, when asking those who are actually on the spectrum, a vast majority, greater than 70% across the board of those who are actually being diagnosed and are on the spectrum said that they have issues with anger, leaving, and saying goodbye. You may not even see it as an adult or as a, with a teenager, but they do have, different issues with saying goodbye, leaving, and anger. When asking the local, community, it's pretty close to 70%. It borders between 60 and 65% each and every time for those three categories: anger, leaving, and saying goodbye. When it comes to a death in a family or a family pet, it's almost 100%. They don't have the ability to connect with that emotion. If I don't care on what end of the spectrum they're on, they have a real issue with saying goodbye and understanding that that pet or loved one is not coming back. And likewise, I'm sure each and every one of us out there knows somebody who has been grieving for, a husband, a wife, a sister, a brother, somebody that we've lost. And we refuse to really acknowledge that they're gone, that they're not coming back. It's hard. It's hard on everybody. Now imagine if just for a second you're on the spectrum yourself and you experience loss of a loved one, a friend, a spouse, somebody that shared in your life, for any given a time. It could have been a short amount of time, it could be a long amount of time, or a pet, that has passed away, and you're unable to express or understand the actual emotion that is there behind that loss. You're in here, the thoughts are here, the knowledge is here, but you don't know how to deal with it. Unless you have a community around you, a very close-knit community, you may never be able to deal with it. And just like, again, using the example that maybe you've met these people in your workplace or at the gym or wherever, within your community, grocery store, daycare, wherever. They don't understand. They can't express that emotion. And if they can express that emotion, they can ask questions about it, but they'll never be able to fully come to terms with the fact that this, person or pet or whatever it might be, is gone. And it's hard. At the same time, you have to think of it from their perspective in life, not from a neurotypical, perspective. And I'm not entirely sure I agree with that anyone is neurotypical, but that's what the textbooks behind me say, that there are people that are neurotypical and they're able to come to terms with grief and loss and saying goodbye. Anger, whenever if things get overstimulated to him. As parents, we watch these things, build inside him. We can tell from our child when he's getting overloaded, and we've done a lot of work where as we see him getting overstimulated, we say, okay, we need to stop right here. We need to take a breather, take a deep breath, and we've installed things like breathing exercises, couple of cues and things that he can do that are kind of like meditation, where he can recenter himself through breathing, and just letting and draining back, coming back a little bit, so he doesn't get to that point where he's overloaded and then explodes and takes off. When it comes to leaving and going from one location to another, or never coming back, or leaving in something behind, a car or a home or a school, and never coming back there, we work with him in steps to, and we explain to him, these things are changing. They're not going to stay the same. Life doesn't stay the same. You're finishing up in early education, it's one school here, and then elementary school is separate. But we had to work up to that point where he understood, this is the last day that I'm coming here. I won't be back here. I can come back with mom and dad later to visit, but I will not be coming back here for school every day. Now, and as we work our way forward through, this education system, through public education, we work with him. We try to keep things and express them to him. So it's never just a shock, that things are changing. Tomorrow, nothing changes like that in his life. We try to keep it working in a little bit by little. We're all, again, individuals, and each and every one of us was made in the eyes of the Lord. You can either like it, or the door is right here, but it should be right about here or here somewhere. You can unsubscribe and leave. But thank you, everyone, for being here today. Tell me in the comment section below, do you know somebody who has those three issues: anger, or issues with leaving, or issues with saying goodbye? It's hard. I'm out here doing my best, and I hope you're doing your best. Not only for yourself, but for those who are around you. You all have a terrific week ahead, and thank you again.